I'm Zim, and you're listening to the Helpful Photographer Podcast in collaboration with Boundless Photo Safari. To register for a safari, please visit boundlessphotosafari.com. Today, I'm recording a podcast on the Polar Latitudes Antarctica trip. I thought it'd be nice to get together with some of the photographers I brought on the trip to discuss lessons learned. So we'll start with introductions.
Barbara Rista, San Francisco.
My name is Les Smith. I live in Frederick, Maryland, the foothills of the Appalachians.
Meg Landis, Boston, Massachusetts.
I'm Jim Haskell from Tracy, California.
Vicki Hibbert, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Lori Holmes from Ottawa, Canada.
And I'm Zim from New York City. So first up, how was everyone's experience? What did you think about the trip?
It was great. It was a trip of a lifetime. It was beyond any expectations. The photography opportunities were beyond expectations.
I was amazed by the mass quantity of ice that we got to drive through. I didn't think that was going to happen just based on the season, but it did, and it was a wonderful experience.
I loved seeing penguins and the seals in the wild. That was really something I never imagined I'd get to do.
Nothing prepared me for the vastness of the area and the light, and everything was so bright. It was breathtaking. It sounds cliche, but it just was unimaginable. Couldn't have thought of it beforehand.
That brings up light. I was told that there would be a lot of light here. We wouldn't need tripods, etc. We'll talk about why we brought tripods in a little bit, but there was a significant amount of light. Even when we were shooting at 1/500 or 1/1000th of a second, our ISO was still pushing down at around 100. You guys agree?
Yes.
So let's talk about the equipment we brought. I brought the Holy Trinity, the 16-35, the 24-105, and I also brought a very long lens, 100-500 millimeters. I felt like I used all of my lenses. What was the most helpful lens for you guys?
I use the telephoto lens. I have a 150-600 Sigma lens. That was the lens that I predominantly used. I did use the wide angle a few times. And on one day, I used my mid-range 24-105. But I had another lens, 70-200, which I did not use one bit.
So what I brought with me was a 70-200 with a 2x teleconverter. That meant I could shoot at 400. But 600 really, it offers the challenge of a smaller frame and composition, keeping that, but it also reaches further. And far too often we found those critters to be pretty far away.
I predominantly used my zoom lens. I found it was great to be able to get close up and see the animals without disturbing them, and my wide to capture the immense expanse of snow and ice and water. The lens I used the most was my Sigma 150-600 because we couldn't get that close to the animals and we could only get within about 10 meters of them. I got some really great big portrait at 500 millimeters or whatever. It was fantastic.
I would agree with Lori. I think I used sort of long lens, telephoto lens for the majority of the thing, and then probably the ultra wide and mid range sort of equally, about 30% of the time.
I felt like I used all of my lenses. Certainly had use for the 14 millimeter. Actually, mine was 14-35. We came into some passages where we're very close to mountains and icebergs where that 14 was very, very helpful.
I had a different tactic than a lot of the other people. I actually came with 2 camera bodies. Originally, it was going to be just a backup camera body, but then I found it very helpful to have my 60-600 lens on one camera and my 24-105 on the other. As other people were changing lenses, I was just lifting up my other camera and taking a shot.
You know, the previous podcast with Jen Keister, she said she brought 2 bodies because she didn't want to have to change lenses out. And that's a solid strategy. However, it does add a lot of weight to your bag. What was the most challenging position that we had to shoot in?
Quite often we were out on Zodiacs. The animals are far away. As you lifted up your 600 millimeter lens, boats bouncing up and down. People are shifting their weight in the boat, trying to get a better position. And quite often I had a hard time trying to actually find the object within my frame to get it to be centered. It's very difficult and challenging.
Polar Latitudes tries to put us on land twice a day, but it's weather permitting. So if the water is a little bit too rough and they can't land us, what they do is they put us on a Zodiac and take us out for a cruise. So we can't land because it's too rough, which means we're in a Zodiac that's equally rough. And so what Jim was saying is you're pointing your 600 mil at a penguin, but you're bobbing up and down inside the Zodiac.
Yeah, I think it almost made me a better photographer because it was a more challenging situation. And, you had to stay focused on the object and where you were and your settings. If the animal started moving, you might need to change shutter speeds or mode. So I feel like it sort of sharpened my skills a bit. I was a little more focused on exactly what I was shooting and how I was shooting.
I think if you have the opportunity before you come, if you like get on a boat and shoot some just to practice under those like the motion conditions, I think that would be really helpful before you came down here. Had I thought of it, I would have brought knee pads. So kneeling on the bottom of the Zodiac while it was a stable shooting position got pretty uncomfortable bouncing up and down on your kneecaps. So if I'd had something to cushion that a little bit, I would have been more comfortable.
In terms of kneeling, when I would kneel, I had a tendency to rest my elbows on the Zodiac. That's not a sound tactic because now you're setting yourself to the motion of the Zodiac. Once I freed my elbows and floated, then I had a little better chance of getting my subject in the frame.
So one of the reasons why we had to kneel in the Zodiac is that they load the Zodiac up with 10 people, 5 on each side. If the animals or the thing you want to shoot is, let's say, on the starboard side of the Zodiac, those people had to kneel down so that the people on the port side could stand up and shoot over them. It wasn't always guaranteed that it'd be on one side or the other. So what Lori said, having knee pads for Zodiac rides is really important. I actually brought one knee pad because I have a bum knee, but yeah, next time, probably 2 knee pads. What other challenges did you have on the Zodiac?
Getting in and out could be a challenge. If you're not positioned right or the boat shifts as you're trying to swing your legs over, take the assistance of the crew. When they offer an arm, take it on.
So what about the waterproof bags I had everyone buy?
Absolutely essential, kept everything dry, made it easy. The access from the top to me made it easy to pull different lenses out. Although I will reiterate and second Jim's suggestion of having two bodies with different lenses.
I would also suggest being generous with the size of the bag. Not crazy, but if you've got a 30-liter camera bag, don't try to bring a 30-liter waterproof bag. Go a bit larger.
I had purchased a waterproof backpack that just fit my camera bag and turned out to be a bad strategy. I thought I'd have to keep my backpack with me at all times. But when you land, they put out a tarp for all of their gear where you can also leave your gear. So you can take your camera bag out of the waterproof bag and leave the waterproof bag on the tarp and retrieve it on the way back. I borrowed Lori's gigantic waterproof bag and discovered that was a lot more useful because I can get my bag in and out of the dry bag quickly and easily. Now, one other strategy I saw was Barbara's. Barbara brought a waterproof duffel bag and not a backpack, which means that she can zip down the center and pull her stuff out. Now, when we're on the Zodiac cruises, you don't get a lot of splash because you're not moving, so you can take a picture. If I had a duffel, I could have just pulled my gear out very, very quickly, and that wasn't the case with my backpack. But also, should they say, okay, we're going to get into rough water here, we're going to get some splash, I would have been able to shove my camera back into a duffel bag much faster than the backpack I had.
My duffel bag doubles as a backpack, and the bag itself is just a shell. And inside the bag, I have one of the Peak Design cubes. So it fits my lenses, it has all the Peak Design dividers. So I can just unzip that Peak Design cube, grab my stuff, and everything holds sheet really well. But the duffel itself is just a shell, and it has really good zippers that lock airtight as well.
Oh, I was gonna say that I have bought like an inexpensive just backpack that rolled at the top, and I just didn't feel that was very secure, and I think I would have gone with some sort of a zipper bag that closed more completely. I'm gonna go with personal preference. I loved the roll top online. I could open it up, and if a splash was coming or we needed to move quickly, just open the lid, shove it in, and kind of fold over, as opposed to with a zipper.
Other things I was gonna add about the Zodiacs and the Zodiac shooting is that one of my recommendations is to shoot a lot of frames because in respect for the wildlife here, they do not want to hover too long. So when you're there, shoot as much as you can and just get a lot of shots because you don't know when the guide is going to decide that that is enough time really, and that you that you're moving on.
So, Meg, is what you're saying spray and pray?
Do not spray and pray.
Not spray and pray, but be generous in the amount of frames that you take while stopping intermittently to check.
Speaking of which, how wet did you guys get on the Zodiac?
Just a few splashes here and there. It wasn't that bad. The waves are too large. The staff had to ease off on the throttle a little bit, try to steer properly so that we didn't get very wet. So there's a few splashes here and there, but overall, not too bad.
I didn't get wet nearly so much on the Zodiac as I did walking around on shore and overheating. We had some stellarly beautiful days and it was quite warm.
We did have one Zodiac experience where it was snowing. Beautiful and beautiful to shoot through, but having, I guess, there were a variety of ways that people addressed that. Some had plastic bags, but having something of a waterproof cloth or something to just maybe cover or drape over your camera when you're not shooting, I thought was helpful. People address that in various.
Even a shower cap.
Yes, even a shower cap is helpful. And they do have shower caps on board. Jim, Lori, and Vicky just said they didn't get splashed very much. Well, Les and I sat at the front of a Zodiac and a wave came over and hit me in the back. I was soaked. My waterproof pants were not waterproof. So make sure you check that your waterproof gear is waterproof because where Les and I were sitting, we got pummeled by water. But remember, this is salt water. You don't want any of that near your gear. If you bring a little plastic bag, you can very quickly put it over your camera equipment and just cinch it up with your hand, just hold it until we got back to the boat or wherever we were traveling to. Speaking of waterproof clothing, what did you bring that was most helpful? Waterproof and other layers.
I brought a heated vest and heated gloves and heated socks. And the heated vest was really, really useful, as were the heated gloves. The heated socks, I think less so because the muck boots are pretty sturdy. And if you have decent socks underneath, my feet never really got cold. But having the vest was a nice added touch.
For pants, I bought a ski bib secondhand off eBay. I don't ski. I don't live anywhere where it's cold, so I didn't want to pay ukus bucks for ski pants. So I did that. I thought that was great. I used, rather than wearing multiple layers of socks, I got snowboarder socks, and my feet were just not cold between that and the muck boots. The muck boots are lined, and I found those to be quite warm.
So one of the things I bought, even just on Amazon, it was a balaclava, but it was a waterproof on the outside, and it went over my head and had a belt or fleece that went over my mouth and nose, and that was really nice when you're on the Zodiacs and the wind maybe it was whipping, and it was nice because I could just pull it down when I needed to shoot, and then pull it up when we were traveling.
I also bought ski gloves that had a zipper. So there was a liner inside the gloves, and then there was a zipper on the side down the length of my index finger. So I could pull my hand was still in the glove out from the mitten part of it, and use it to manipulate my hammer. My hands stayed warm. If they started to get a little chilly, I could tuck them right back inside the mitten. That worked out great. And the glove bit had like texture to it. So I could, if I wanted to take a picture with my phone for whatever reason or take a little video, I could do that fairly easily. I was a little worried about the mitten part being in the way when I was trying to use my camera. And I found that to be pretty minimal.
And speaking on gloves, my gloves had flaps on the index finger and the thumb. And this actually worked really great because to manipulate the camera, I could just remove the flaps, but the rest of my hand and fingers were in the glove. And I found that I didn't really get cold, like the thumb and the index finger were fine.
I had a pair of heated gloves, and what I did before I left home was sprayed them down with like a nanotechnology waterproofing. So if they did splash, everything still stayed dry. And then once on shore, I moved to a slightly lighter weight pair so I could feel the trigger and buttons on the back of my camera. Other thing I found beneficial was a knitted baseball hat that was kind of fleece lined. It had ear flaps. If I didn't want the ear flaps down, they would button up, but otherwise, that's what kept my ears nice and warm.
I bought pants that were advertised as waterproof. Brand is a reputable brand. Took them at their word. I'm not convinced they actually were, and they certainly weren't up to the expedition grade of the jacket that Polar provides. I didn't have heated items. I used hand warmers on the day that looked coldest and windiest. I used toe warmers. They're adhesive, they stick, they go between the liner socks and the heavier socks that I wore and stayed in place very nicely in the boot. Also, on that coldest day, I took two of those toe warmers and put them on the outside of my mid layer around my kidneys. And that was a warmth in my jacket. Hand warmers also went in my pockets. That's where my batteries were. That this pockets zip up, so I wasn't going to lose them. I could put my hands in my pockets to warm up a bit, and my batteries were also always nice and warm. And consequently, battery consumption due to the cold I never found to be an issue.
Just wanted to circle back on the gloves. I think all of us would say we got a lot of use out of a thin, sort of sturdy glove. And then I recommend sort of bringing at least a thin glove and a thicker glove. I think in my case, I had thick, medium, and thin. But I think it's vital to get a good pair of thin gloves that you can still manipulate, but keep your hands rather warm, but having the other two for what we march in.
I want to address the heated glove that Barbara and Lori had. By heated, they mean that it's electrified. It comes with a battery and you plug it into your glove, your socks, or your pants, or whatever. And there are wires running through that heat up. I opted not to go that route because the batteries were so heavy. If you've got room in your luggage, it's a great way to go. We're hearing it right now. But for me, having hung out in the cold quite a bit in New York City, I didn't feel the need for it. And I certainly did not want to carry the extra weight of those batteries. So that's why I opted against it. Now, all this advice depends on whether you run hot or cold. Some people run really cold. That's me. So I've got multiple layers on. Some people run a little bit hot. Al, who's not on the podcast, was practically in a t shirt the whole time. To Les's point, too, he bought pants that he thought were waterproof. And not necessarily so. Some of the other people also bought pants that they thought were waterproof from reputable organizations. My suggestion is buy the gear, jump in your shower, and spray your pants down. It sounds extreme, but under certain situations, when we got hit by waves, that was not extreme. That would have been like being in the shower. But also the muck boots. You're not providing your own muck boots. Polar Latitudes is providing it to us. I also feel like none of you needed the toe warmers because we had extraordinarily good days. I mean, just perfect, right? On our last excursion, though, we finally got Antarctica. And since the weather is so squishy here, you got to be prepared for both. If it's sunny out, you don't need that many layers on. But on that last outing, I had pretty much everything I owned on, plus, the hand warmers and the toe warmers. That's how I kept comfortable. It just depends, right? We got really, really lucky.
As far as packing, I packed some stuff for warmer weather. Not exactly super warm, but just warmer weather. When I got back to the boat after the expedition to take a shower, I found myself putting on a t-shirt or shorts to go to the next meeting or to go to a meal. And I've been very comfortable that way. It's not very cold on the boat, in my opinion, but I also run hot. So don't forget to pack some clothes that are just casual t-shirt and shorts because I myself going to that far out.
The number one item that people seem to have regretted not bringing enough of are t-shirts to hang around home.
I would also have brought for like the boat is like some slip on shoes. You're not really supposed to leave your cabin without footwear. Something like a low profile UGG, or I think Tiva makes a warm little shoe that you can slip on that has some tread to it because the deck can be slick. That's the one thing that I really wish I had packed.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, very often, especially as we were going through the Great Cross Hatch to Antarctica, there would be announcements on the PA that there are whales on one side of the boat or in front of the boat. And so having warmish sort of slip on shoes and keeping your camera in shooting condition and having something you can kind of throw on quick would be very helpful.
Yeah, this is where my heated vest and I have these really comfy slip-on shoes with some lining on the inside. It came in really handy because sometimes if we see orcas on the side of the boat, the crew would come on the intercom and say, "Hey, there's orcas off to the side." And so it's a mad dash to get your camera, and I could just throw on my heated vest. I don't need to change any clothes, get my shoes on, have my camera, get out there, and then just find them.
Yeah, so that was a big lesson learned for me in that I finally, halfway through the trip, realized always come to the common area with a jacket. Always come with your camera. Because if they come on the PA and say, there's a whale on starboard side, you're now rushing outside to take a picture, but the boat is in motion, which means it's cold out. It took me quite a bit of time to figure out that I should always have a beanie with me and a jacket with me because if you're shooting out there, it was really cold. We were talking about not needing stuff. Well, on the landings, we didn't need much because we had sunny days. But if we were moving around, standing at the front of the boat there, taking all that wind, it was freezing.
I found the times I was coldest was trying to shoot from the boat while it was moving. Like you were trying to hurry, so you weren't necessarily dressed appropriately. Yeah, so having something like Barbara has, again, like a slip-on shoe that's warm, yeah, a vest that you could get on quickly would have been
And sometimes when they said over the PA that there were whales about, I'd have to run to my room to grab my camera equipment. By the time I got back, they were basically gone. So always being prepared at all times with your camera equipment is really helpful. And especially having something warm to put on because it's just too cold.
The crew did a really good job on the zodiacs spotting animals. So on our first day, I felt like all the animals had read the memo and just showed up. And there was a whale off in the distance, so a lot of us got some really cool shots of the fin and the tail of the whale as it was splashing, and penguins and seals. And between the different zodiac boats, they're in communication with each other via radio. So you can hear if someone spots a whale, they'll tell the others where it is. So they did a very good job of doing their best to navigate us to animals.
One of the things that I observed from our group and others was we had our cameras, and then a lot of people added a GoPro on top of that. I think I had a little GoPro envy on this trip, especially for this because there's so much to experience and capture that, or maybe not even a GoPro, something that can capture both your still frames, but also something that can capture movement or action either with the animals or what's going on the boat when we do the bullet plunge, all of that. I wish I had more capability to capture video. And even when the penguins are walking, it's hilarious. They're walking on land and hopping on the rocks. One of my recommendations would be I'm happy with the equipment and the lenses that I brought, but something either GoPro or some better case for my iPhone to capture that motion.
I did purchase a GoPro before the trip, but I didn't really know how to use it. And I'm still glad that I brought it, but I probably could have gotten more use out of it. Like what you're saying, like on land, having the video of penguins. I just didn't have the comfort with it. So I used it for the underwater shots, and that was cool, but I probably could have gotten more out of it if I had taken the time to learn it properly.
To Barbara's comment about the expedition staff, their ability as helmsmen, don't be reluctant to ask them to go in a direction. Don't be reluctant to ask them to back up 10 feet. They were always happy to do it. Many of them expressed how they themselves were photographers, and so they had a sense of what we were trying to accomplish. It didn't take them long to figure out and get on the same wavelength and really assist in positioning, getting around.
The Polar Latitudes crew were very accommodating. So the key is if you see something, say something, and they will accommodate you the best they can. But I want to round back to what Meg said. She wished she had the opportunity to shoot more video. I found in the first couple of outings, people were, and it's normal. Everybody's excited. It's your first outing. You're seeing some of the animals and this amazing landscape. But some of you were trying to do a little too much, and then you end up missing the shot, right? So pare it down and keep track of how much stuff you're moving around.
While you're on the Zodiac, you find yourself with a lot of stuff around your neck. You've got layers under a very strong jacket. Then around your neck, you've got a life preserver. You probably have your iPhone hanging on a leash. You've got your ID hanging on a leash. Maybe your camera bag or your camera. Also, all of it around your neck. Jim, I thought you were very smart. Once upon landing, you started shedding some stuff.
Yes, I was taking off my life jacket. The one last thing around my neck. As you heard, I was carrying two cameras, my room key around my neck, also my iPhone in a pouch hanging around the neck. So it was a relief to actually get the light jacket off and sort of remove some of that weight around the neck. And also, I found it helpful to remove my mid layer before I hiked up the hill. So it's still waterproof, but exerting energy and creating heat inside your jacket that just stays inside the jacket. So by getting rid of that one layer is very beneficial for our trip.
I have found it useful on all of these trips to take at least one photo with my iPhone in the different locations, because even down here, I was surprised to learn your iPhone knows where you are and uses GPS to geotag that picture. They tell you you're at Hannah Point or Livingston Island, but you're not going to remember later. So it was useful to have that handy, kind of a guide, so like I know I was on this island on this day, and I got cute video of penguins waddling. That's fun too.
To that end, not every picture has to count. You see a cute penguin, he's in a bad spot, doesn't matter. Just take the picture. We're recording our experience. We're not just trying to find that one shot to sell. That'll come in between, but experience the experience and put the camera down. Next question. I'm now curious. I don't think anybody burned through a whole battery. Lori did.
I did burn through a battery, but
What?
I had 3 on me at any given moment.
Every time I went out right before we left, as part of my prepping, I put a fresh, fully charged battery in my camera plus brought one. And the only time I ran through a whole battery was when I hadn't done that. So I came out with a battery that was maybe 70% charged instead of 100, because I am a good student. I had a extra battery on me that was warm, and I was good to go.
I started with a fresh battery on each outing and 2 more in my pocket, and I went through the first battery 3 times.
And what kind of camera are you shooting?
I'm using the Nikon Z8.
Actually, let's go around.
Sony A7 IV.
That was Vicky, and Jim is shooting.
I was shooting a Sony A7R3 as my backup camera and an A7R5.
And Meg?
I was shooting the Canon 5D Mark II. I started that. That was my original sort of starter camera. I did that for the first 2 days or so, and then switched to Canon 5D Mark IV, and I could see the difference.
This is Les. I was shooting a Nikon Z7 II.
This is Barbara. I was shooting with the Canon 5D Mark III.
And I was shooting with the new R5 Mark II. How many frames did all of you fire by the end of this?
For me, it was close to 10,000, I think. Probably 5,500, not counting the iPhone.
I would guess I probably shot around maybe 4,000 images.
Yeah, I would say 4,000 to 5,000 images.
I shot between 5,000.
About 4,000, 4,500.
All right, so now we know why Zim and Lori ran out of batteries often, because I shot closer to 12,000 frames. And I'm going to say this, you all not shooting enough. More frames, come on.
So put down your cameras and enjoy the experience.
Not sure what you're saying. Okay.
But don't spray and pray.
So depends on how many frames you guys are shooting, on how many batteries you need. I definitely ran through a fresh battery 3 times on the Zodiac. Prior to the trip, we talked about how many batteries you should bring. Based on this conversation, 2 is enough. But the thing is, we had really good weather, and we didn't stand out in the cold for particularly long. We just said earlier that the coldest was when we were on board on the side or in front of the boat, where we could get a clear shot and not inside the ship. So we could always run back to our cabin to get another battery if that was the case. But on the other hand, I was anticipating the camp out, where we were going to spend about 10 hours on the ice. For sure, that's going to drain your batteries. That brings up the whole tripod issue. Everybody brought a tripod. Nobody used it because there's no point in using a tripod on a moving ship. The purpose of bringing the tripod and the ND filters, which we never used, was for the camp out. My anticipation was that if we had good weather during the camp out, where you got a little bit of cloud action and some blue sky, we could have used ND for long exposure and the tripod for long exposure. But we actually didn't get to a camp out because it was never safe enough for us to do that. But I'm glad I brought it, because if we did do a camp out and it didn't have my ND filters or my tripod, I would have been really unhappy. So if the NDs weren't helpful, was there another type of filter that you guys carried that you thought was helpful?
Yes, the circular polarized filter was very helpful on certain days where there was lots of ice around the boat. It gave some stunning images. I would say if you are understand how to use your circular polarized lens prior to this practice before coming on this trip, because I think it's one of the things you should bring.
Yeah, I agree. Before this trip, I don't think I really knew how to use my circular polarizer. I probably had used it in the past to cut out light in the sky, but the way we used it here was on the icy day. And there's these icebergs, and you can see right below the iceberg continues underneath the water. Like you only see 10% above the surface. And if you're not using a circular polarizer, you're going to get a reflection. So you're only going to see the iceberg and the reflection. You won't necessarily see below. I think with the circular polarizer, like it didn't click for me that this is really where it comes in handy.
So we were hoping before the trip, Lori and I were talking about being able to see the seals under the water or penguins under the water, and the only way to do that is with a circular polarizer. It is a little tricky to be using a CPL while you're in motion, but with a little bit of practice, you can definitely do that. So this brings up prepping for the trip. Not only the clothing, but prepping your equipment for the trip. Unfortunately, to prep for that, you really should take your gear out and shoot a bunch, 500 to 1,000 frames with every lens, and just to make sure that it's functioning well. And with regards to the GoPro, if you're not well versed on it, you're not going to capitalize your equipment.
To your point about practicing with your lens, one of the other things that I did on Zim's advice was do a lens test for my 600 millimeter. So I really knew at what settings it performed the best. And I found that extremely valuable information because I used it so much this trip to know like where I could get the sharpest images.
With regard to equipment and making sure it's prepared, one of the concerns I had was about batteries. My batteries are between 2 and 3 years old. So one of the things I did was mount my camera on a tripod, put a battery in it, take it outside on a cold night, set it up with an intervalometer that would start shooting at 4 a.m. and shoot every 30 seconds until 7 a.m., the coldest part of the night. And in every case, they still had anywhere roughly 30% capacity left. So that told me these batteries could be endured.
So test, 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 and test. Anything else?
Polar plunge?
As far as any recommendations on the polar plunge, I would recommend that you do it voluntarily.
And maybe even twice.
So what we're joking on here is Les and his kayaking buddy tipped over. Yes, they got a polar plunge involuntarily. And Lori, on the other hand, did the polar plunge voluntarily and discovered that her GoPro did not capture anything, so she went in for a second round. Now, the polar plunge, should you do it or shouldn't you do it? Everybody in this room did it, right? Oh, Vicky did not. So those who did it, do you regret it at all, or was that a good thing?
Not at all. I thought it was great. It came back with some great video and photos. I was able to pull still frames out of my video. And before I got there on the boat, I figured out where I needed to hold it, how I needed to hold it, which angles, and it came out great. I got a video and a photo of me jumping in the water like midair with icebergs in the background.
If someone just heard about a kayaking incident and going in to drink, and if they've already been on the edge of not wanting to do the kayaking, a little concerned, I'd point out that the staff was on it right away. They had us out of the water in less than 2 minutes. Our dry suits were doing their job for the most part. Mine leaked a bit, but it wasn't the same as a polar plunge. And they had me back to the ship in pretty short order. So they're on top of the game.
Again, this staff has just been great. They are safety, safety, safety first. Mike and I were in the kayak right behind Les and Al. Didn't see it go over, but I heard them yell, capsize, capsize immediately. And I looked up and they were in the water, and the Zodiacs were definitely coming to retrieve them and get them out. So they're really on it.
Don't let this kind of story deter you from choosing to experience a kayak.
Yeah, it was I was so glad that I did the kayaking, like just to be that close to the water. We had some challenging conditions for kayaking, because there was a lot of floating ice in the water, which I had never experienced. But it was so, and the water is so clear and beautiful. And just to get like that, I don't know, penguin's eye view was really amazing.
I chose not to bring my camera gear in a dry bag on the kayak. I think that's a choice that you can think about. In some cases, people had either GoPros or were shooting on their iPhones with a waterproof case. Vicky had their old camera. And so I think that's something to, I guess, think about because the kayak, you are the closest to the water without being in the water. It's a different angle to shoot from. I guess just plan ahead. If you have a waterproof case for your camera or whatever, it was a stunning sort of angle to shoot from and a very unique one. So just think about kind of how you would approach it if you wanted to just kayak.
So I brought my backup camera kayaking, but I gotta tell you, when I saw Les and L having capsized, all I could think was, thank goodness I did not bring my big camera. It is a risk. Both of these guys knew what they were doing and they capsized. It just happened.
I would also suggest if you are taking a GoPro, make sure it's tethered to you. That if you do tip, you don't lose your camera. And then another big thing is if you've got your camera and housing in the water, when you get back to your room, wash it really well because it's salt.
So Lori used to be a scuba instructor, so she has a lot of experience with saltwater and equipment. She knows what she's talking about there. Make sure your equipment is rinsed very, very well after you get back.
It's soaked. Soak it. Leave it for hours if you can.
Okay, I think that wraps it up. Does anybody have any last piece of advice to share to future photographers?
Don't pass up this trip.
That's a good.
It's a trip of a lifetime.
You really are seeing some amazing things. But be prepared for all different kinds of weather, from sunny to cloudy and completely freezing and snowing weather. I hope that was helpful. Until next time, keep on shooting.
No, but as far as penguin view, you're upside down. That's the
That story gets better every time you tell it, Les.
It was a giant iceberg that took us down. Ripped aside in the kayaking hole.